Welcome back to the Indiewood Podcast, a podcast about independent film and the many hats filmmakers have to wear in order to get those films made. With me this month, I have a very special guest who is a longtime friend, an incredible actor, incredible creative, Wayne T. Carr. And T is your middle name. It's T, period, Carr with two R's.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like T. Carr.
T. Carr, yeah.
And I'm like, that's
People
not,
just like
yeah.
Wayne T. Carr.
But that'd be a cool last name. Yeah.
T. Carr?
T. Carr, yeah. Last episode 1, we talked about your career, your trajectory, and kind of how you've embraced opportunity and said yes to a lot of things, but also said no to a lot of things.
Yes.
And we talked specifically about acting and your shift from being a biology major and a college football star.
I was a player. I wouldn't say star.
I mean, a long time ago.
Like, I was a star, everybody. I was a football star.
A college football player to an actor on that's been on some of the biggest movies. That's been on some of the biggest stages, and has done TV and even small projects like a web series, which I keep bringing up.
That's all right.
My web series. You were on my web series.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's how we met. Yeah.
Put it out.
But when we were talking about prep for this pod, for having you come on, we were kind of talking about utilizing your craft, whether it be acting or directing or producing or writing or editing, and kind of using it outside of the scope of its initial, its intended use. Like, oh, I'm an actor, I'm going to be on stage. Oh, I'm a writer, I'm going to write movies. And I think me and you both have embraced something interesting, and I think a lot of people have too. They're finding new uses for their craft. Mm-hmm. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because you kind of brought this idea to me, and I was like, that's amazing. I want to talk about that more. For me, I'm a screenwriter, but I've also shifted a little bit of my creativity into journalism. Mm-hmm. And I guess marketing, I think, would be kind of like journalism masquerading as marketing. But I would interview directors of photography and other creatives and filmmakers and do a little exposés about them because they use a certain tool. Yeah. And you have taken acting and done something else with it too that doesn't belong on stage, that doesn't belong in front of a camera. And I want to hear more about that.
Shakespeare has this quote. Mm-hmm. It's the beginning of a speech, kind of. He said, all the world's a stage.
Yeah.
And it is. All the world is a stage. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to necessarily talk about the book that I'm working on, that I'm writing, because it diffuses, I think, some of my creative energy. But there is an element of stage craft, of the craft of entertainment, that I think is in everything. And so the thing we talked about, I think, was the company that I work for, Dramatic Resources, which is based out of London. Mm-hmm. They work with big, corporations. I'm not going to name them, but they work with big corporations and go into their spaces and talk to them about their delivery, talk to them about the energy and the culture that they're representing as a company. And they play games with them, like status games, and they coach people on how to have one-on-one conversations. They do all kinds of things, which is very, very much theatrical, a bunch of theatrical elements that they create a curriculum out of to help people who are engineers and scientists and, et cetera. And so I started working with them because a friend of mine introduced me to them. I had an interview. It worked out. I've been working with them for about a year, and it's been amazing to take the things that I do on a daily basis and help people who would say, yeah, I'm not an actor. I don't do theater. I don't do whatever. But the skills that I have as an artist, as an actor, I'm helping people who are talking about budgets at a company that are
the
millions
TPS
and
reports.
Yes,
yeah,
it's incredible.
I wanted to broach this subject with you because this is something JJ and I talked. When he was on the pod. This idea that being an artist isn't real. Like, when are you going to get a real job? Like, when are you? And I think because we play for a living, like, as a writer, I'm just making stuff up. And I'm like, these two people have an imaginary conversation about aliens and there's explosions, and then you're on stage, like embodying a Grecian general who's like talking to a siren of the like. This is all play.
Yeah.
We're just adults.
Yeah.
But I think what people forget is that a lot of these tools and a lot of these things that we're doing and exploring have parallels in what some would call like a real career, like let's go work at the factory, or like let's go do a 9 to 5 at, Morgenstein and I don't know what's like a corporate name.
I'm not going to even throw in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
corporate name.
I don't
Just
know.
a corporate name. Just
Like
say a
I gotta do this bit. Whatever. Just whatever tech company or corporation or
Sure.
like Oracle, for example. Like, what does Oracle do? Yes, I know what they do, but like when you think of Oracle as a company, like you're like, huh? They just do stuff, you know. But those personal interactions, not only with your coworkers, with your bosses, with the things that you do on a daily basis, like they can benefit so much from acting. And I'm seeing a lot more actors and writers and directors use those skills that they've accumulated in the creative space. They're using them in this non-creative space. And so that idea of like, oh, you got an English degree, like good luck working at Starbucks. And I'm like, no, I'm using my English degree now outside of my creative field to tell stories for marketing,
Yeah.
for journalism. Like I am a storyteller.
Yeah.
And I think people with acting skills like yourself are also doing that in a corporate setting to help people communicate better, to help people deliver a presentation better.
Yeah.
And my wife also does something similar, but it's with lawyers. So she works for a company that helps lawyers with that uses actors to help lawyers and witnesses during prep and trial,
Yeah.
which is incredible.
Yes, it is.
Because what do lawyers do when they, plead a case? Tell a story.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think what I'd want to talk to you about is like getting people out of this mindset of you're an artist and you can do art and it has value, but those skills also have value outside of the artistic intention, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of people who aren't interested in that, right? So if you are,
Or that,
you might
yeah.
not necessarily want to do anything journalism-wise, marketing-wise. That might not be what you want to do.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm just a writer. That's all I do, and that's okay.
totally cool too. Yeah.
That's absolutely okay. And if you're cool with doing that, I think that's why people have that energy, that attitude of like, oh, well, good luck working in Starbucks. You got this English degree or whatever.
Yeah.
If you isolate yourself and that's the only thing that you want to do, can do, whatever, if you don't have that opportunity, then yeah, you might have to take a job at Starbucks or wherever, right? To make ends meet. And that's cool. But if you're open to possibilities to do other things, anybody who specializes in anything can branch that out, into a lot of other things. I don't think, especially artists, we don't necessarily get in the grand scheme of things the value placed upon us that we probably deserve. But as you were saying, I tell stories, I write stories, and I would piggyback and be an advocate and say that's life. All life is a story.
Yeah.
Everything that, from our politics to it's all a story. Your life is a story. The things you've been told is part of your story, which creates you, who you are, right? And so if you can figure out a way, this is kind of part of the book that I'm writing, figure out ways to change your narrative, change your story. It's like a mantra. It's like, people go, I think this is one of the best things about like being raised in the church like I was. We go to church and you hear whatever the sermon is, and it's not even about necessarily knowing this or knowing that or whatever, but if you're talked to about love and forgiveness and whatever over and over and over again, you walk with that in your life. I forget, Mandy Patinkin sang this song. I remember studying it, but it kept saying, you've got to be taught. He did it with such great diction.
Was this
You've got to be taught
for
to hate and fear? And I was like, oh my gosh, that is such a great, I don't know what it was for.
Was it for Sunday in the Park?
I don't know. It might have been. I have no idea.
Sunday in the Park with George, right?
I just remember studying it in school and seeing a clip of him sing that, and I was like, that line in that just keeps replaying in my head, and I don't know any more of the song. I still, over these years, haven't looked it up, but I love him, and I love that song. But the fact that it said you've got to be taught to hate and fear, that to me is storytelling. It's your life. It's how your life has been unfolded, and you grow up to think and believe certain things. Change your narrative.
Yeah.
Change the story that you digest, and you are a different person.
Why just solve all societal and cultural problems in 20 minutes on this podcast or this episode? No, because you're right. I mean, I think that when you break everything down, it all is, we're all just kind of sitting in a hut, telling stories or sharing oral history, and I'm referencing kind of the histories of humanity where we just sat around in tribes and we didn't have written language. We just told stories to each other, and people carried that, and that's literally at the. I would assume, or I would. That's my opinion, that baseline of humanity is just still that sharing of stories. We just do it differently now. We have admin, and politics and whatnot. And you mentioned Mandy Patinkin, Patinkin, who I have the same thing. And I think this ties into what we're talking about because he did Sunday in a Park with George, Sondheim musical about George Seurat. Thank you. Haley was like, that's the right name. And he's the one who painted that pointillism painting with the folks at the park. Yeah. And he has this song in it which is called Finishing the Hat. And that song just kills me every time I hear it because it's this story about him literally finishing a hat in the painting. Yeah. But there's a line in it where he goes, "There never was a hat." That's the end of it. And I'm like, the way I'm going to tie it back into this is because we're talking about creating stories for ourselves. And some of these stories might not be true or might not be, but they have meaning to us because in this moment, he is drawing a hat in a painting that's telling a story about this moment in life for all these people, but the hat didn't exist. But the narrative's changed. Yeah. And I always think back to that song, and every time I hear it, I try to understand the things that I'm perceiving in my own career, my own creativity, in the world in general, and seeing how I'm affecting that narrative with positivity or negativity. Hollywood's dying. Is it? We're here, we're making things, I'm writing, you're on stage. The idea that the film industry is dead can be such a self-fulfilling prophecy. I guess, but now we're getting a little too metaphysical.
That's okay.
We're digressing.
That's okay.
Beyond this idea of which is the idea.
We can make this conversation what we want to make.
That's true. That's true. Even though the idea was how can you be a creative outside of a creative?
It's a deep question.
Yeah, it is. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's damn. Dug a hole for that one. Let's see if we can fill it. Let's see if we can fill it.
Yeah, we can fill it. Of course we can fill it.
Oh my God.
I feel the question can spark so many things and take you down a rabbit hole, and that is what it is. But how we're feeling today is how we're feeling, right? And tomorrow it can change. It can be completely different. And I say we embrace that, right? I say we allow that to be what it is. We're going to create this today. We're going to say what we feel today. Tomorrow we might be like, oh my gosh, that's out there in the world now.
Delete it.
Yeah,
Take it back.
that's not. I don't believe that. I don't think that anymore. That's I've expanded my mind. Great, awesome. Keep going.
I think you're allowed to change your mind as
you should
creative.
Be able to.
I wanted to kind of touch on this a little bit as well because I started this idea for this episode with this. Your craft is legitimate because it can exist it can exist in the real world. And I think I fell into my own trap.
Yeah.
And then you said something interesting that really kind of changed my mind a little bit or gave me perspective on it, which was if you wanted to do the thing, if you wanted to be an English major and just write a book, right? Or study the Odyssey, and that's all you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
You can do that,
Yeah.
and that is legitimate. And I think with this episode, what I want to kind of convey to folks, and I think you've kind of done that for me and for I think other people as well, that your craft in whatever capacity that you want to do is legitimate,
Yeah.
and that's it. I don't know. I was gonna say that's okay. No, that's not. There's no okay. It's legitimate.
It is.
You can
Yeah.
be an actor on TV, on film, on stage, be a director, you can make small movies, you can make YouTube shorts. That is legitimacy. And I think we have to stop treating creatives as like, oh, it's not a real thing, you're not serious about life. Like, because sometimes I see all these older actors that are character actors, and I'm like, you're an old man. Like, we saw The Parenting last night with Brian Cox and Lisa Kudrow, and my God, the gentleman from Breaking Bad. And Brian Cox, I was looking at him and I was like, that's a man in his later stage in life. He's naked and he's saying these weird things that someone wrote, and that's his job.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is that not legitimate? Just because you're not like successful and you're not on a big movie or in a big show, that doesn't mean like that. For some reason, that means you're like not or like doing things seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, there are people who are doing some things that you would probably think are absolutely insane.
I've
There are people who make paper clips.
yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
What do you say about, you know what I mean? I don't care what anybody says about me as an artist or how what they think or whatever. And I think we get caught up in that so much. Like, oh, what are you? Oh, what? Yeah, I don't care what you think about what I do and how I do it.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't always like that. I cared so much about what people thought. I didn't tell people for the longest time that I was an actor when I lived in New York, because they were all be like, well, oh, you're working at a restaurant or you're whatever. And I'm like, why do you have to talk to people? Like,
Delegitimize. Yeah. You know why? Because they're jealous.
Is that what it is?
Maybe I don't know. It's probably someone probably feels jealous and said it that way. But how did you overcome that? How did you overcome that?
It took time.
Yeah. But what was the support system? What was the word? What was the experience that you went through for you to come out the other end and be like, I'm good?
Just, I mean, life, traveling, meeting people. There were people, I remember I went, one of my random things that happened, and I was like, yeah, I'll do that. It didn't pay a lot of money. It was just a couple $1,000s. It was a short film that this director from Slovenia, Johannes Lapine, was like, I need an American actor to play this soldier from World War II who gets shot down in Yugoslavia and meets this kid who doesn't speak English, and that's it's like our version of Gone with the Wind,
Yeah.
and I'm doing a tribute to the
Okay.
film. And so I was like, what the heck is, I want to do that. Why? Well, they're going to fly me over to Slovenia, which I didn't know was a country at the time, to be honest with you. I had no idea, you know. And they were like, it's former Yugoslavia. I was like, oh, former, okay, great. Now I understand it. I get it. Anyway, long story short, I went there. While I was there, I took a detour and went to Munich. I took a detour and went to Paris. I met artists from different parts of Europe. I remember going to Germany and hanging out with a bunch of the actors in the theater there, and they were part of a company that was supported by the government. And the conversations that we had as artists were completely different from the conversations that I would have here in the States with artists. And I was curious. I was like, what? Why is that? And part of it is they're legitimate.
Yeah.
They're legitimate. They're being supported. They're looked at as valuable by society. And they're not stars. Most of the people that I was talking to, that I was hanging out with, matter of fact, I was hanging out with a German movie star and a bunch of theater people. And so she was on a different level here. But over here, these theater people who I was like, yeah, you're my people. Yeah, I'm shooting this film in Slovenia, but I normally do the theater thing. They were just as valuable as the German film star, because they're legitimate. They're looked at as artists, and artists are valued there. And in Europe as a whole, it seemed like artists were valued in a different way. And again, that's part of the story that we're told.
Yeah.
hear the story that we're told. If you're not an A-list celebrity doing the whatever, then you're struggling, you're whatever. And a lot of us may be struggling, but we're not legitimate according to our society with how we view things and how much money we should have, et cetera, et cetera. I tell my own story for myself. I create my
Yeah.
own story for myself. So I don't need anyone, and that's come from experience. I don't need anyone to tell me that what I do is valuable.
Because it is to you.
I know,
And I think at the
and to other
beginning,
people as well.
I think initially it's important for it to be valuable to you. Because when I write, I have to write for me. I have to write things that I
You're
like.
your first audience.
Exactly. And then beyond that, as you kind of grow, then it's like, okay, well, who's it valuable for after that? And I think you just have to find people that find value in you and in your art and in your, presence and everything that you bring to the table, whether it be for a play on stage or for, the conference room,
Yeah,
and you can do both. You can do one, you can do the other. And I think people that are listening now, I think we should all kind of band together and work on legitimizing the idea that artists are valuable.
yeah.
Because if you
Start with
look,
yourself.
yeah, true, true, true. But if you look at all these things that are kind of important in our country, communicating, selling things and branding and politics and I'm sure there's a bunch of other things that I can't think of off the top of my head. It's all based around telling a story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And all about conveying what's in here. And I'm pointing at my chest. I keep forgetting it's a podcast because we have three cameras pointing at me. And I'm like, people can see me. And I forget that people are sitting at home, like on
Yeah.
Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and be like, what is he doing?
That always happens.
They're just
That always
silence. I
happens.
hear thumping. What is that?
That always
What
happens.
is that? Yeah.
All of the podcasts that I listen to, that happens. It's like, oh, they don't understand. We're just listening right now.
Yeah.
Or I'm just listening.
Yeah. But kind of circling back to, I think we cracked it. I don't know if there's a lot more to unpack.
Oh, there's
with that.
always more to unpack. But
Yeah.
I think we answered, yeah.
It's you gotta be. I think if we break it down to like something actionable, it's self care. Like find ways to not be mean to yourself and be like, oh, I'm not successful. I'm playing around. I'm not a real person. Like I'm not a real boy because I went to theater school. Like I went to
It's based on like when it comes to art, well, money is a big deal, right? Because we all have to pay
Yeah,
rent. We all have
yeah.
to, survive and eat and do all of those things. But I remember the thing that made me go into this art form was when I was able to tell myself, if money didn't matter,
What would you do?
what would I do? And telling stories is what I would do.
Yeah, I'd write.
I would be an artist. I would
On a
write.
desert
I would
island.
act. Yeah, absolutely. This is what I would do for fun. Period. Especially like with a group of people, an ensemble, getting people together to like tell a story or whatever. Yeah, I'm on board. I don't have to worry about money. Absolutely. I'm not going to do open heart surgery for fun. I'm not going to
Yeah.
write laws for
Yeah.
fun. I'm not going to do a lot of things, And so, I admire the people who do those things and find joy in that. That's great. That's what they should be doing.
Well, I guess this is a good follow up to kind of wrap this episode up. Is I think that was a challenge for me, where I looked at the things that I was doing. I was like, I need to pay rent. How do I bridge this gap where I need to feel open and free and in love with myself and with my art to create things, but then also feel like somehow I can survive on a paycheck and pay the bills? And a lot of people do it in different ways. They, work at restaurants. They, work for
Real estate.
Yeah, that for writers specifically, they'll do copywriting and marketing and
Yeah,
journalism. Like they'll write blogs and I think that there's a shift. There's this shift that happens where you find a way to pay the rent, fill your fridge, and not feel like you're struggling.
Yeah.
Like you're okay, if you're good, and then you have this time to go do these other things. But finding that, I think, that moment where that switch happens, where you're like, okay, I'm doing things that pay bills, and I'm an artist, and that's okay. We're here, and we're just going to move forward. But from your experience and your perspective, is there anything you can kind of convey to folks where it could be a bit easier for them to find that switch?
I don't know if it's necessarily an easy switch to find as a general in a general term.
Yeah.
I would say generally figuring out what it is that you love and then just figuring out a way to like block out the noise. Because if you love it in your own little space,
Yeah.
then that's where you start, and then developing the confidence to kind of like spread that out into the world sometimes takes time. I think my situation took time. The way I view things took time. It took me saying yes to that trip to Slovenia and doing that, and then meeting a bunch of artists. It took moving here 9 years ago to realize, oh, well, this is the kind of artist that I am. This is kind of how people see me, and that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think ending on Mandy Patinkin as a good period to this episode, where your quote with him was,
it was something that I heard him sing.
Yeah.
You've got to be taught
"You've got to be
hate
taught."
and fear.
Yeah,
You've got to be taught anything.
And I think we can all teach ourselves to be nicer.
Yeah.
And to be more accepting and to be more open. And I think we're just kind of piggybacking off episode 1 of like, say yes, be open to things, but also say no. And I feel like that's confusing to some folks.
It might be.
It might be, and that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, you can
They'll
be confused.
figure it out when they're ready.
Yeah, travel more, do the thing. And I think embrace this idea that being an artist is legitimate.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, Wayne, thank you again for coming in for episode 2.
Yeah.
We have 2 more left and a lot of cool things to talk about. Everyone listening, thank you for listening. And then we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Anywood Podcast. You can find the podcast anywhere you find your podcasts or on the CFA YouTube channel.
From the CFA network, Cinematography for Actors is bridging the gap through education and community building. Find out about us and listen to our other podcast at cinematographyforactors.com.
Cinematography for Actors Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. For more information on fiscal sponsorship, donations, because we're tax exempt now, so it's a tax write-off, and upcoming education, you can email us at contact@cinematographyforactors.com. Thanks.